Welcome to Africa Media Australia. Clyde Salumushrad here. Today we have two special people. I've got with me Georgia Birch and Fadumo Mahmoud. They will be talking with us today about a research project that was undertaken a little while ago within the Somali community. The topic was researching the relationship between physical activity and motherhood in older Somali women. As we all live in a quite, would say, sophisticated society, which has a whole lot of things. Science plays a key role in not only guiding, decision making by the politicians and other leaders, but also in the scientific and academic field. It is important to research things to see what are the relationship between a variety of factors. So it is important to see how some of those research do get done and how they affect the community and what sort of lessons we can learn from them. So we're going to be having a series of interviews with Georgia and Fadumo. Georgia, tell us a little bit about yourself. You undertook this research as part of your work, your studies with the Deakin University?
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I started doing this research with Deakin University, and I chose the Somali community only because that I had done some volunteer work with Fadumo, and we had become friends, and she was then appointed the community advisor for the older mental health group at the Flemington Housing Estate for older Somali women. And so that really appealed to me, so I decided to do my research around physical activity and motherhood, and thinking that this is going to be a fairly easy project, but I learned a lot about the cultural concepts around the African community, and we established a relationship where we both worked as co-researchers on this, and I think that's what came out of it. It was a very effective process, and I think the results really showed that.
Furthermore, tell us about how you met Georgia, and what sort of thing came to your mind in the initial phase of the research and your relationship with her.
I remember meeting Georgia was first time we were doing a barbecue, our Somali community and a whole lot of Eritrean close to us, where I was working as a community worker, and been introduced as a researcher. And after the first initial was like, oh my God, we're gonna have a researcher doing some research, kind of research for Somali community,
yes.
Which was it was new to me, it was new to the ladies. So, but before we even started, we became friends, and she helped me another project which I was doing, and that time. So, and then when I find out she's genuine, she want to know more about this, and this is good for us as a community, special physical activity which I never seen been done before. So we just started.
Okay, yeah. That's good. And how did that relationship all started? What were some of the challenges that you faced in the initial phase?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges were actually being a white researcher and interviewing the Somali community, and I think they were very tentative of me coming into the community, and I suppose I had that first taste when we met at the barbecue, and I was probably the only white person out of 50 or 60 Somali women, and I suppose for the first time I learnt just a tiny bit about what it's like to be different, to stand out, to be worry about what you look like, where you're going, where you stand. And in some ways, when we had this sort of talk further into our friendship, Fadumo feels like that when she's with me, perhaps even at the supermarket. She feels that sort of marginalisation. And so as a white researcher, I think it was important for me to understand about myself and my privilege in this country, about being a white person and the privileges that I get by being white in this country. But I've also learnt that those people who aren't suffer a great deal, which we can talk about a bit later.
Definitely. And Fadumo, I'll come back to you. And when you were talking there, you said when you found out that she was genuine, then things got a little easier in the relationship, went better. I think that's a good point, because sometimes when people, especially in our African communities, we do get quite a number of people wanting to do research, and some of the research outcomes we don't necessarily like them. So there's that sort of resistance or even just lack of trust between the community and the researcher? Is that how you also took it initially until things started to get very well with her?
Yes, definitely, because we may never see what's been done from us. We may never see clearly what she get it from us. So it was nice to have as a friend.
Yes.
So she will see every day what she's been collecting from us, and we will be honest as the other side for giving her exactly what she want to hear from us. So it was like open relationship coming from my ladies when I was running as a facilitator, and from her too. So it was very important to have as a friend and see the come out and what's been done after that too, because we always asking her, when you collected this, what's gonna happen? I mean, we want to be done something. It's not like it's gonna be done and then that's it. We just want to come out, and she was making sure that would happen. Physical activity of the ladies being delivered to we're Islamic ladies, we're African ladies, so all that surrounding for physical activity, there has to be come out of it, whatever she was collecting.
That's good. And how did the ladies that the actual participant of the research took the whole thing initially?
Oh my God, they all take us as one she will say, I'm your mother, and the other one says, I'm your grandmother, you're like my daughter. They were so open for her, and they're still friends.
Okay.
At the beginning, I think everybody was very hesitant, and it took a long time. In fact, I probably sort of hung out in the Somali community for about a year or 2 years before I actually asked any questions.
That's a long time.
It is a long time, but it was a great way for me to understand their daily life and the actual problems that they face every day. And I think that's what's really important, to truly walk in somebody else's shoes, to be able to understand their life makes a big difference when you actually start the research. So by the time I actually started questions, it was like you and I talking now. We were very friendly, on very good terms. They understood me, I understood them. And I think that made a difference to the way the women answered. And of course I had Fadumo's sort of trust, and so she could relay that trust often. But that trust also had to be relayed many, many, many times. So consent was given over a long period of time. So you have to develop that trust in order to get those answers.
Definitely. Well, today we're not going to be talking too much about the research itself. We'll do that in the next interview. Today is more how, I would say the settings, the setup in building that relationship and trying to get the participant to respond to the question, to build that rapport with you. Did you find it challenging? I mean, did you also get a sense that the participant initially understood the importance of the research, or what did they have a sense of what the whole thing was about? As
a researcher, you want the people to answer the question that they actually believe in. I don't want you to answer the question how you think I should answer how I want the question to be answered. So that has to be made very clear, because a lot of researchers go in and I think people answer the way they think the researcher would like you to answer. So I think you have to develop that trust in the community if you are to get the answers from their standpoint. And I think that was probably the key in the research, is having that trust in that relationship and really understanding their lives. And they also asked a lot of questions about me. So, and I answered as honestly as I could. So I think if I'm asking questions about them, they have every right to ask questions about me. And
Fadumo, can you tell us why you think the ladies, the participant, asked her a lot of questions, and what were they trying to find from her?
She's different, and they don't know where she's coming from. So to relate on her, they ask her as her motherhood and her children and her husband and how they love her, how her life is. So they can sense of she's a mother, she's a wife, she's all of that. So they relate to her. Every one of them, they have something to say about her, because they can relate, fit her life. So that's why they want just the sense of feeling.
How many?
what she's all about.
How many ladies? How many
We had
participants?
about probably 15, but it wasn't the same people every week. We tended to get people who come and go, and there's lots of reasons behind that. But we did sort of have a core group, and then we sort of had people who often went overseas but then came back to the group. So there was a transient group, but there was a core group.
And how long did the whole research take?
About probably 3 years that we worked together on that research project, and then it took me about a year to write the thesis.
Okay.
And I was just saying though that in that process that we talked about in establishing it, and they were asking me questions, so I actually went out of my way and did things like read the Quran, so that I could ask them questions.
Yes.
And so they thought, well, she's gone out of her way to actually try and understand everything that we believe in.
Yes.
So I went to Islamic conferences, and I tried to really
Get
involve
into their
myself,
world, yes.
into Somali culture.
Yeah.
And I think they respected that, and I tried to do that as best as I could.
And what were you trying to find through the research?
Well, I suppose at the beginning I thought it was going to be easy, Clyde, but it was never going to be easy.
Yeah.
It was probably my ignorance too, that I would be able to just go in and ask a question and get a fairly easy answer.
Yeah.
But as I got involved in the Somali community, I understood there was many factors around why people are not physically active or they are physically active. And so when they come to this country, a lot of the ladies had put on weight and were suffering high cholesterol and high blood pressure. And there were a lot of reasons why that had occurred, and perhaps one of the reasons was they were very active in their country of Somalia. But things had changed a great deal, so there was a lot of, you could be able to turn on the tap to get water. You could go to the supermarket only once a week and put it in the fridge. So those sort of things. In Somalia, they would walk to the market 3 times a day. They would meet and greet people often, and they would do things like grind flour, build fires. So all those sort of things had stopped once they came here, and there were subsequent reasons for that. But there were a lot of reasons too, and there was quite a bit of racism. So even what I would consider would be easy would be going for a walk in the park. For them, it's not so easy if you have an egg thrown at you or you're abused from a car. So there are a lot of factors that we can talk about individually later on.
Absolutely. We will be talking more about those topics. So today was simply just to give you some understanding of the whole project and how the research it was initiated and conducted, but we'll be talking in more specific details a bit later. Fadumo, before we finish, on a personal level, tell us how you your experience overall from the beginning of meeting Georgia to the end, and also facilitating that communication with the participant. How did that change you? Did that bring anything to you personally?
Of course it does, because I never ask those kind of questions. I'm not a researcher. For her to come in and explain to us, and we explain to her what's changed here, and that open our mind. That what's the things being changed, and that was wow factor, because exactly coming this country, cold weather, and staying together as a community and groups, and not helping, we just should be exercising and thinking ourselves. So that opened a lot of eyes for me too, because all of us, we just want to not much changing our way of life, but then doing some kind of activity, because this is the way this country is. We have to be, we're living now, so we have to be doing some sort of how they're living. So it's not like we can live like the way we should be and expecting the weather will be fine and then the food will be fine, but it's not. The food is not the way it should be. It's not organic the way it should be, and the lifestyle, it's changed automatically, so we should be changing with it, revolving that. So that was eye-opening. It was a lot of education there for us too.
And what did you get a sense that it was the same thing from the ladies? Tell us a bit more about the ladies, if you think that the questioning, the answering of those questions has brought anything into their lives.
It does. Since we met Georgia, we learn how to eat as a small she eats small, this small.
She's probably counting the calories.
Counting the calories for when and we were like, oh my God, we didn't understand first.
Yeah.
But now ladies are saying, Georgia, I'm eating this much, and we talked about that all that because of you. And she just every time we're having community gathering, she eats big things. So we watching that develop us to get a sense of what it is.
Georgia, before we finish, you as a researcher, from the moment you started to when you ended, what changed, if any, in your personal and researcher life, so to speak?
Well, I think I learnt more about myself than anybody else. But I should say Fadumo was a community member who I didn't realise had more difficulties sort of having a white friend trying to work with a researcher and also be a Somali community member. So she had to transfer back into the Somali community and then come back to me to do research. And that was very difficult for her because some people may have thought, well, she might go back into the Somali community and say, so-and-so said. And so she had a great deal of professionalism. And I think that was one of the key things that I have learnt from her, that she's able to live in quite a few worlds and interweave herself between Australian culture and Somali culture and be respected in both. But on some occasions there were clashes and we had to work through that. And so I think probably for me, I learnt a lot about myself living in a country and being in a privileged position and learning a lot about myself, about multiculturalism. And I still even learn today that Fadumo feels on the edge sometimes, even out of place. Whereas I never have to feel like that, or most of the time I don't have to feel like that. But I always try and sort of interweave myself in the Somali community and remember those things when I'm different, when I'm the person out there on the edge. And hopefully that gives me a better insight into how people live their lives, especially in communities such as the Somali community. So for me, I'm still have to be reminded that, and I was even only reminded about that about 3 days ago when we were at the supermarket, and Fadumo was telling me, this is even where I feel out of place even here. And I didn't probably not understood it, but don't remember those things all the time because for me it never happens. Even though we're very different, we look very different. But in the end, we've worked together really well and we're wonderful friends and wonderful researchers. And I think it's a great way to sort of promote research in the African communities, that we can work together and that, you know, both of us can learn from each other. And in doing so, I think you produce better research, both for white academic researchers learning how to be good researchers like Fadumo, and for Fadumo learning how to help white researchers interweave themselves. I think she's a very good teacher. And
for the participant to even understand their world and how it has changed from where they were to where they are now, and how they can do to adapt and in the same way, not necessarily forget where they come from, but adapt to the new life. Thanks very much, Georgia. Thanks for Fadumo. We unfortunately running out of time. It's been interesting. We will definitely have more about this.